If you have stuck around and watched a lot of these episodes that I've released on the nature of mind, then perhaps this is something that resonates with you and you want to know more about the mind, about yourself, about consciousness in general. So, in this video, I want to talk about some authors that you can listen to, some other minds that you can subscribe to, listen to what they have to say, buy some of their books, find them online, and you can look at some of their work and perhaps gain some more insights of your own and expand your own understanding of mind. So the first name I want to mention here is Bernardo Kastrup, Kastrup. I've spoken about Bernardo in some of my previous episodes that I've released on the nature of mind. So the idea of dissociation, dissociative identity disorder, and how the larger mind can fragment and dissociate itself into smaller minds, into you and me, and the trillions of minds on this planet, both human and animal. I got this idea of dissociation from Bernardo. I also spoke about Bernardo in the episode that I released on the brain and what the brain is. The brain is basically a representation of the process of dissociation of mind at large into a fragmented mind, right? So I'm a fragmented mind, you're a fragmented mind. All of the animals and other people that you see on this planet are dissociated, fragmented minds. And this process of dissociation presents itself as a brain and nervous system. So I got this idea from Bernardo as well. When we're talking about representation, right? The activity of mind is representing, expressing itself into physical form. And this activity, this fragmenting of mind into many minds, presents itself as biological life. And biological life comes equipped with a brain and nervous system, right? So I always had this idea that it's all mind, but I could never put two and two together. What relationship does the brain have to mind? But after listening to Bernardo's talk, it started to make sense. Everything in physical reality is an expression, a representation of an underlying activity. Speaking of Bernardo, I came to know Bernardo through Rupert Spira, Spira, Rupert Spira or Spira. So while Bernardo gets very intellectual with his explanations, which is what works for me personally, I also needed an introspective understanding of myself, about reality. And this is where Rupert Spira comes in. Because Rupert can take you deep within your mind. He can guide you in meditations and introspection into trying to understand the nature of your mind, the nature of yourself, the nature of consciousness. So all of these videos that I've released, I've taken a very intellectual approach to explaining what the mind is. But of course, you also need an introspective approach. You're not going to just believe what I'm telling you here until you do the work. And the work requires deep introspection, sitting down and thinking about what I'm saying here without just believing it blindly, obviously, right? The reason I'm talking about this is because it deeply makes sense to me. The dots have connected, and that is why I'm talking about it. I wouldn't be talking about it if I didn't believe it strongly. So you need to get to that point way it becomes believable to you. Not just believing it outright, but actually having an experience of what I'm talking about, thinking deeply about the stuff. That's how it starts to make sense to you, right? A few other names to mention that you should definitely look into: Leo Gura from actualize.org. He has a lot of YouTube videos that you can listen to, and his talks can take you really deep into understanding who you are and what the mind is. He does talk a lot about psychedelics as well, and you want to tread carefully here. He talks about the dangers of psychedelics as well, which is necessary. Uh, when he talks about psychedelics, you have to be, of course, familiar with the laws of your own country and region, wherever you are. And I think you have to be in a very mature state of mind to be doing psychedelics. Even being 20 or 30 years old may not cut it. At least you need to at least be 35, 40 years old to be doing psychedelics, because psychedelics can radically alter your understanding of reality. It can completely shift your perspective. So you got to be very careful with these substances. When it comes to Leo Gora's work, I would recommend you listen to his videos on spiral dynamics. That's a good place to start. Conscious politics, if that is something you're interested in, and deconstructing the myth of science. Some other names to mention: Donald Hoffman, the idea of looking at physical reality as a representation, as a user interface of an underlying activity. I got that idea from Donald Hoffman as well. A few other names to mention: Dr. James Hollis. I haven't listened to a lot of his work, but I'm starting to listen to Dr. James Hollis, and I like what I'm hearing so far. Carl Jung, Dr. Ian McGilchrist, Thomas Campbell, Deepak Chopra, and Neil Donald Walsh. So those are a few names that comes to mind. And if you listen to some of these names that I've mentioned, listen to their talks, their videos, you will automatically come across some other minds, some other people who talk about things that are similar in nature that you may resonate with.